Good afternoon. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Corey Hart. I'm the product manager at RBI, and we'll be walking through SmartCharts Pro today to give you some tips and hints and hopefully learn some things about the product that you may not have known before, or reinforce some understanding that you already had about the product. RBI launched SmartCharts as the replacement for RBI Expert late last year, and we've gotten a great response thus far. There's a lot of new features and functionality that were built in that I'd wanted for a while in RBI Expert, so we're excited about the release. As I'm going through the demonstration, please feel free to use the GoToMeeting panel if you have questions, and I'll do my best to keep track of those as I'm going through. Otherwise, I'll answer them at the end. If you have any questions after the call, after the conference, then feel free to email me at corey@rbintel.com if you have any specific questions about the product or stats you're seeing. With that, I'll go ahead and get started. So this, most of you should be familiar with at this point. This is the main landing page of SmartCharts. This is the application itself and the SmartCharts Pro view of the product. The product is set up into 3 different sections that should cover most of the needs either at a high level, or you can get drill down into as granular of a level as you need to. Dashboard is the first section, then there's charts, and then reports is the third. I'm going to dive into reports first, and I'll just touch on these pretty briefly just because they're pretty straightforward, the functionality here, and the reports themselves hopefully are pretty intuitive. So for example, if I'm looking at, let's say that I'm going to an open house for a condo that I'm selling in Landmark, Alexandria. As I'm changing locations, we used to, in RBI Expert, we had this GeoJump bar that was a bit more, took several more steps to just change to the location that you wanted. This new, more intuitive change location functionality, I can type in either a county, region, association, down to a subdivision level. For the example for the detailed reports, I'll go ahead and let's just dive into Landmark Cameron Station. Make sure that, okay. There's 2 basic reports. There's the detailed reports, and then there's the local market insight report. And there's a few iterations within each of these 2 main sections. I'll go ahead and look at the yearly detailed report for this particular zip code. Simply click yearly, pick the year going all the way back to 1997 if for some reason you wanted to see stats that long ago. And it's just basically a PDF. This is based off of the old NAR template. We've updated it a bit, but we stayed pretty true to what NAR, similar to what MRS reported on before RBI came around 5 years ago. So for the yearly report, this is showing me key indicators and how they compare for the last year versus the year prior. And I can see the percent change for any of these metrics. It's not the sexiest report per se, but it does give you a ton of information, and the fact that it's available at a yearly or quarterly level and a year-to-date level as we get further into the year, that should be of help to our users. So definitely take a look at this report. It's great for folks that are either used to using that sort of NAR style PDF. You can print it and take it with you as you're having your conversations with your buyers or sellers. It's a very quick thing you can get at. The local market insight report, we spent a lot of time in trying to figure out what are the key indicators that we'd like to see, that we'd like to show as what are the priority metrics that we should pay attention to. So if, let's say I'm going to a condo open house, I can go and quickly get SmartCharts, get to the reports tab. I don't have time to dive into too many of the metrics. Let's say I'm just I'm on the run going from listing to listing, and I just want something to hand out at my open house for folks that are coming in. The Local Market Insight Report comes with a branded page. Granted, in my view, since I'm logged in as an admin, you don't see my branding, but for those of you that are pro customers, then you should have already seen, we'll have your name and contact information on all of these pages. The first page, since I clicked on all and on condos in the previous page on the application, the first page is for all homes activity in that particular zip code. So these different modules give me a view of how new listings or sales and purchase activity has picked up or dropped off from the last year. And we've seen similar trends to what I'm seeing here in the last few months across the DC metro area and Baltimore, and that listing activity continues to pick up and sales are picking up once again, which is obviously a good sign for real estate professionals. I can see how any indicator compares to the same month last year versus the same month versus the previous month. We always recommend looking at year-over-year changes. Then you're comparing apples to apples. For instance, we know that once we get into February, March, April, there's going to be huge upticks in closed sales, and that's not necessarily an indicator of a real change. It's just that's the normal seasonal pattern. So this is for all homes in that particular zip code. And then if I go down to the condo and co-op section, I get a nice narrative detailing, trends. I can copy and paste this into whatever materials I want if I am more comfortable doing that. Otherwise, I can just look at these indicators and talk through them with my clients. Again, we'll have your branding up top. So it's great for getting your name out there as the market trends, as the stats expert near you. You know this local market, and you will have your branding right on top of this great report. Okay, so those are the reports. Again, that was pretty quick, but I think they're pretty self-explanatory. Now I'm going to go ahead and dive into the application itself outside of those PDFs, and I'll go back up to a higher level. So let's look at Fairfax County, just for instance, and I'll jump to different locations to hopefully hit locations that are of interest to the majority of you at some point during this presentation. So when I click on the dashboard, this is a great starting point if you're just looking to quickly get into, okay, how's the most recent market activity compared to the average for this time of year? This is the market gauges section. So here, the way to read a market gauge, any of these, is there's a lot of information contained within just this single view. So the boundary on the left and right are basically the 5-year January minimum and maximum. So if this dial, this is the most recent month, if this dial is sitting at the minimum boundary or the max boundary, then I know I'm at a 5-year min or max. If I'm above this color break, where the color breaks is the 5-year average for that month. So we can see that sales in Fairfax County are well above the 5-year January average and near the 5-year peak. New pendings, which are new contracts that were written during that month, they're slightly below the 5-year average for January. Active inventory is above the 5-year average, but not at the peak. So we've all seen in the news, inventory did start to pick up last year, but I'll get into it a bit when I go through the charts. We're still nowhere near, at least in the DC metro area, we're still very much in a seller's market, even though there has been some year-over-year upticks in inventory. Months of supply is a stat which basically, actually I'll stop right here just to explain, as you're going through the application, if there are metrics you're not familiar with or terminology we're using, a good resource that we've built out is the definitions page. This is on SmartCharts on the main website, sort of our marketing website. But if you click on that SmartCharts logo, head back out, click on the support tab, And then there's a definitions subsection. This definitions, we've defined all the different metrics, facet categories, what is a median, et cetera. So use that as a good resource to hit if you're not quite sure about what a certain term means or what a metric is indicating. Okay, now we'll get back out to, so months of supply. In a nutshell, it's basically saying how long would it take for all active homes at the end of the month, how long, based off the 12-month monthly sales average, how many months would it take to run through all active inventory if no new listings came on the market? So generally 4 to 6 months is generally considered a balanced market. If no new listings came on and it took 4 to 6 months for all actives to get sold through, that's about balance. As we can see here, months of supply in Fairfax County is at 2 months. Very much a seller's market. Anything under that 4 to 6 month mark is basically a seller's market, and the lower it is, the stronger the seller's market. Anything above that 5 to 6 range, it's generally considered a buyer's market, and that's when you start to see, days on market start to pick up. You'll see prices stagnant, etc. So months of supply is really it's new for SmartCharts, but that is an indicator that supply and demand trend is really going to drive a lot of these different metrics. I'll get off the market gauges in a sec, but just these arrows aren't quite as clear, as prominent as I probably would like them to be. And I'm the product manager, so that's my bad. But there are arrows you can scroll through to see other indicators. Median list price for actives is above the 5-year average. Median sale price at the 5-year January high. New listings are at a 5-year high. So as I'm scrolling through, days on market is picking up well above the 5-year average. And that's something we've seen over the last 12 months or so, is that days on market is starting to pick up, which should be of relief to your buyers. There's a bit less pressure on them. And then the sales to original list price ratios. So you can scroll through those. Any of these can be embedded on your website by clicking on that embed function. I will get into the embedding piece at the end of this webinar, just because some folks don't have a website, they aren't interested in embedding. So I try to save that for the end. But you can embed these as an evergreen spot on your website, and they'll update automatically if you have a stats section or even on your homepage. I can change which metric I'm trying to show. If I just want to look at, say, months of supply, this will be updated, and I'm copying and pasting this onto my site. I could get into more detail at the end of this about embedding, because that's part of the interactive charts prime functionality. The Spotlight section is pretty straightforward. YOY, that's year over year, so that's comparing January. So for instance, for closed sales, the 705 closed sales are 4.1% more than the number of sales in January of 2014. Again, YOY, that year over year, that's what you want to pay the most attention to. Month over month is almost always, unless you're looking at the 10-year average December to January change, that's not really going to be that meaningful, because almost every indicator is going to be impacted by just month-to-month seasonality, normal patterns. This contract snapshot gives you a view of how the last 5 Januaries have looked in terms of contracts, contingent contracts, as well as closed sales, all in one spot. Okay, the Explore feature, let me see if we have any questions at this point. Nope. Okay. The Explore feature is new to SmartCharts, and I love it. I use it all the time for some of the reports that we write for Loudoun and for the DC metro area. This Explore functionality is great at giving you key metrics across child locations of a parent location. So what I mean by that is Fairfax County, it's got cities, which you can see here, so it's showing me the median sold price for all cities in the county. I can change that to look at all zip codes in the county. And then for those counties that have valid legal subdivisions based off of the MRS legal subdivisions, I can also look at how prices compare for all legal subdivisions within a particular location. It's relatively quick considering how much data is being brought back. The issue with year to date, so I'll switch this back out to zip codes. Excuse me. This is the 1 month of the year, unfortunately, that year to date isn't going to be all that meaningful, in that January is the only month that we've had so far this year, obviously, so the year to date is going to match January. But once we get into March, April, May, June, this year to date comparison is a great way to compare these lower volume locations like your subdivisions and zip codes, because there will be more meat behind those stats and that there's more volume built in over those particular months. So how can I use this? I can export any of all of this data, whatever view I'm looking at, I can export it to Excel by just clicking on that Export tab. It'll give me a CSV of all that data if I want to get into Excel. If I'm comfortable with Excel, that's what I use when I'm doing, say, the Loudoun County report and I'm comparing all zip codes within Loudoun County. I'll export it to Excel and further do further analysis from there. Another way to use this in your marketing, if you happen to be in one of these locations that is on the fast side in terms of days on market. So we're talking about January. January is always going to be one of the slowest months of the year in terms of how long homes have sat on the market. But we can see here there's about 6, 7, 8 or so zip codes where homes that sold in January were on the market less than a month. That's pretty remarkable. We're sort of used to that in the DC metro area, but the fact is that this is one of the fastest moving markets in terms of how long homes are sitting on the market. So even though we're up from a lot of these are higher than last year, we're still, we're talking about January and we're talking about 1 to 2 months of days on market. Let's say that I am a Delray, or let's say that I'm a Rosemont agent, and that's one of my primary areas. Half the homes that sold in January were on the market 2 days or less. That's something that I want to get the word out about. When we get into the interactive charts, then we can see just what forces are behind that huge, extremely fast rate of sale. You can see how all of these zip codes compare to the parent location, in this case the county. So anything above this is selling faster than the county at large. Anything below is obviously selling for longer. So let's look at what's going on with this Delray Rosemont 22301 zip code. What forces might be giving those sellers such quick success in getting their listings off the market. And that's when we'll dive into charts. So the charts piece, and I'll try to cover all the different elements within. I'm not going to be able to hit on every single metric, but just for the example we were looking at, what could be driving the days on market? If I open up the days on market here, I can see the median DOM, 2 days. Wow. What's driving that? Supply and demand, months of supply. So remember I said anything under 4 to 6 months is generally considered a seller's market. They're right around the 1 month time frame. So that 1 month time frame means there's not enough active listings out there to satisfy the demand, even the January demand. That's a key driver. That supply and demand, the fact that demand is greatly outweighing supply is driving. That's why sellers are selling for faster. I'm not going to get into it here, but most likely the average sold price to original list price ratio here is higher than the average, just because there isn't enough inventory to satisfy demand, and it's way off balance. I mean, the entire area is a seller's market, but this, 1.2 months of supply is remarkably low, and that's probably why we'd see something as crazy as 2 months or a median days on market of 2 days. But now I'll back up a bit and let's just look at I'll go back out to the DC Metro level. So DC Metro is an aggregate of counties in the contiguous to the DC Metro area, or to the district itself. And here I can see the months of supply is 2.1 months. But one of the key uses of SmartCharts, one of the reasons why having 10 years worth of data can be helpful, is it helps for you to set the context of the current market against historical conditions. So what I mean by that is you can get into the inventory question. So that's a big question for all agents and home buyers and sellers. We just did a little post with Urban Turf about the tight inventory in the DC metro area. The market activity section is broken into 5 different metrics. So I can see closed sales, new pendings, all pendings. So the difference between new pendings and all pendings, just briefly, the 6,301 all pendings, those are homes that went to contract and are still in contract at the end of the month, but they may have gone to contract in December, November, October. If they're short sales, they may have gone to contract way back in August, and they're still sitting in pending status. So generally what we look at is the new pendings. New pendings mean these are only those homes that went to contract during that month. So it's just looking at most recent purchase activity, and it's a leading indicator for what sales are going to look like in the months ahead. When we're looking at the inventory question, that's your active listings. So active listings means the number of active listings at the end of the month. So it's a snapshot at the end of every month. We grab the active listing count. If we go back and if we look at this, over the most recent years, we're seeing inventory's up 30%, 33%. Wow, inventory's up 30%. Now it's the January inventory, it's up about 18%. So that means there's 18% more active listings at this time than at the same time last year, which is positive news for buyers. There's maybe more options, maybe that the competitive atmosphere is changing. But then when we look at that over a 10-year period, by changing this from the 1-year view to look at it, let's first look at it over the last 5 years, we can see that even though it's down from last year, we're still not where we were even 2-3 years ago, where inventory was even higher. Looking back at it over 10 years, here's where you'd be able to give an overview of what happened during the bubble and the crisis that followed. So here we can see active listings as recently as 2008. There were 25,000 active listings in the DC metro area. You'll want to look at this for your county or zip code. But we've gone from 25,000, and even though we're up year over year, we're down to about 8,000 active listings. How did that happen? You can look at that by looking at new pendings versus new listings. And I'll switch this to line view so it's legible. But here we can see if we change this to change from previous year, right now this is charting just the number ofs, like this is the actual count of these different statuses. Using this change from previous year functionality, now this is changed to a 0 graph where the percent change is my y-axis. So back during that buildup in inventory, we were seeing 276% year-over-year increases in active listings. That happened because this green line is listing activity, the red line is contract activity, and we can see right around that time frame, everybody started putting their homes on the market. everybody stopped buying those homes, and then inventory just shot through the roof. We've had a pretty healthy last few years in terms of market activity, in that listing activity has been up and contract activity has been up. Contract activity started to come down a bit last year, but we've had a good recent we've had a good trend over the last 3-4 months of purchase activity is picking up on a year-over-year basis. I just got way too into the weeds for these purposes, but I just was trying to give a sense of what this change from previous year meant versus the actual metrics. In terms of using the charts, just the functionality around the charts, we can look at one more thing that's critical now that we have this 10-year view. As you can see, these hills, you see, for contract activity, spring, winter, spring, winter, spring, winter. Most of us know that, even before 5 years ago, before I even got into this real estate space, you knew, there are more homes sold in the spring. What I wasn't aware of, and, maybe anecdotally it would make sense, but now if you look at that impact of seasonality on things like prices, spring, winter, spring, winter, spring, winter. This is why we do year-over-year percent change, because of the normal seasonal patterns. But this is great information for you to share with someone that's considering selling their home. Maybe I had a neighbor that was thinking about selling in November, and I just pulled this chart up and said, don't. This is, I did an analysis of just what this means. Basically, over 10 years, I just looked at the DC Metro, and I pulled this stuff. You can download this stuff to Excel. Anything that you have charted, you can download as the actual data into Excel to do further analysis. Not that you necessarily want to. I just did. I looked at the median list price for new pendings. So this is things going to contract. Obviously, that list price might come down, and in a lot of cases it will come down once the final negotiation is done. But you can look at the median list price for new pendings to see that seasonality. And the analysis that I had looked at over 10 years, May is the best time to buy, because over 10 years, the May 10-year average, the 10-year median list price for May was 7% above the monthly average for all 12 months. December is the worst time to buy. It's a great time worst time to sell. It's a great time to buy. In that December new pending prices were 7% below the monthly average. The delta between December prices over 10 years and May prices is almost $50,000. That's something that your buyers and sellers, and you should be aware of. And you can see whether it's in hotter markets, there tends to be even more seasonality because supply and demand dynamics. So the DC metro area, like we also do stats for Charlottesville, and you don't see that same degree of seasonality in all the different metrics because spring isn't quite as hectic there. So that 10-year view, looking at things like days on market, obviously homes take longer to sell in the spring. This is, this, but this is a chart that you can put in front of someone that is looking to sell, but they're thinking about waiting till later in the year. Well, you can turn this on and say, look, it's not only going to take longer to sell if you wait till, the fourth quarter, but if you get in now, think homes generally are going to, you'll have much faster success here. Okay, so this is just trying to put things in your pocket to, have at your disposal when you're having those types of conversations about, when's the best time to sell, when's the best time to buy. More specifically, if you look at you can compare multiple metrics and multiple facets, or you can compare locations. So just looking at the nuts and bolts of this space, those of you that have been with RBA, had been with RBA Expert before, remember that we used to stack, we had our market activity chart, and then beneath that we'd have a days on market chart and a SP to OLP chart, and you'd have to basically go and rebuild your chart every time. The great thing about SmartCharts is we've collapsed it all into this one space, so now you can compare multiple metrics or multiple facets or compare locations and not have to rebuild your chart every time to get at the characteristics that you'd like. So for instance, let's switch over to Baltimore. As I'm switching, whatever metrics I have turned on will remain in play. If I had home types turned on or bank mediated turn on, whatever I had turned on, as I'm changing locations, the chart will refresh based off of that new location with and keep intact anything that I had previously. We can compare multiple metrics. I'll switch this back down to just 1 year view. I'll go back to a bar chart, and you can see where I'm toggling the view here. I also have a data view, which I'd only use if I'm exporting to Excel. But I can look at things like for median days on market. So that means half the homes that sold in January in the Baltimore metro area were sold in 65 days or less. So half sold for obviously more than 65 days. We can see that last spring, half the homes sold in the Baltimore metro area in a month or less for 2 consecutive months. That's only part of the listing sort of life cycle. As you all know, we've added new metrics to give you a better, to help you set better expectations with your buyers and sellers. So there's median contract to settle as well, and average contract to settle. We prefer to go with median because those outliers really can impact the averages or the mean. So the median contract to settle, this means that the homes have the median days on market for homes from initial listing to contract was 65 days. For all homes, the median days contract to settle was 43 days, so about a month and a half. You can expect to have a normal home in that contract process, and so you can also look at the median days to settle. So this is your total time. It's not going to be 100% of the case. You're going to be in this lower 50% that settles in 108 days. But this is the basically the time from original list to contract date. That's your median days to settle. You can see for the Baltimore area, it's 108 days. Now, since I have 3 metrics turned on here, I can only look at one particular characteristic at a time, and I'll show you how we can do multiple characteristics against one metric. So these are facets or characteristics. I can see it's now a drop-down. If you remember before, this was a pick list. So an interesting thing here, and it's something if any of you that dabble in the short sale market, if you're a short sale expert, this maybe if your stats beat this, that'd be great. But so this is the initial thing is for all home types. But let's look at what this does for short sales. So remember, this median days contract to settle is 43 days. When I turn on short sales instead, it's 105 days. And 223 days is the median days to settle for short sales in the Baltimore metro area. This time under contract is, God bless you. If you go after that short sale market, that's great. But it's also something if you're looking at, if you're trying to advise a buyer and they really are on the fence about a short sale versus even a foreclosure or a standard sale, bring this up and they probably might start leaning more heavily towards a standard sale. Again, I have 3 metrics turned on, so I can do one facet at a time. If I change this to instead just look at one metric up top, so let's say I just want to look at this median contract to settle metric. Now I can see that my facet bars are now pick lists. So now with one metric, I can turn on and compare short sales versus non-bank mediated, which is basically non-distressed. And in this one view, I can compare contract to settle for non-distressed is 42 days, short sales 105 days. Another new metric that we have that, and this is the last thing I'll touch on with short sales, but is in our supply and demand section. If I look at this seller success rate, so this is saying of all homes that were under contract that they could either close, stay in contract, or fail. All those that didn't stay under contract, that either failed or successfully closed, 84% of standard sales in the Baltimore metro area successfully closed. Once they were under contract, they ultimately closed. Short sales, this is another thing to keep in mind if you're a short sale, if you're representing a short sale. 40% of short sales that went to contract successfully closed. So not only are you looking at 120 days as a median days that you're going to sit in that contract, ultimately less than half are successfully closing. Not that, say the sky is falling, it's just something to keep in mind. Now, those get more into a bit, if you're not comfortable with those and you go into the definitions, that's fine. Those are just more granular, in the weeds, sort of, I think they're interesting. But our guidance would be get comfortable with, say, 3 metrics: median days on market, or median sold price, average sold price, sold price to original list price ratio. Nail those first, and then you can dive into this other stuff later if you'd like. But really get to know the key, sort of the staples of all real estate trends, which are pricing trends and days on market trends and seller negotiation trends. An example of comparing multiple metrics, an example of comparing using the facet bar to compare one metric for things that might be specific to your buyer or seller. Let's take a look at, I'm going to switch over a different use case. So let's look at Roslyn, which is heavy into, and I'll just go ahead and get rid of these. Let's say that I have a buyer that loves Roslyn. They work in Roslyn. They love not having a car. But they have a budget, and they're a millennial, and they've got, say, $300,000. But I really want to live in Roslyn. I love it. I've been renting there, but I want to buy now. I've got $300,000. What are my options? Now, before you go dive into looking at specific listings in the MLS, if you're just having a general conversation up front, that's where you can get into things like, let's look at the median sold price. So shoot, $655,000. That's more than double your budget. Sorry, buddy, but we're going to have to, pay close attention to what you can actually afford given your budget. And here you can look at things like living area square foot for those condos that are in Roslyn. So and if you're doing multiple facets or multiple metrics, it makes sense sometimes to have an even smaller time range. So let's just look at 3 months, and we'll switch it to quarters just so we have more volume there to see what the trends look like for different living area square foot. So remember, we're looking at $300,000. You're not going to get a huge condo. I'm just going to turn these on. Bear with me. 800 to 1,000 square feet, it's getting closer. Maybe we can find you a deal. But if I turn on that less than 800 square feet, again, this serves as my legend as I'm talking to the person, or I can hover over these. But really, it's that sort of micro condo is really the option. And hey, if you're good with that, and it's just you or you and a buddy or whatever, let's go take a look at some of these smaller places. Let's not waste our time with anything that's even getting in above 1,000 square feet. So that's an example of using, setting one metric and then looking at different characteristics depending on, whatever the buying situation might be. Another example would be, let's say that you're looking at trying to narrow down on which homes you're going to focus your marketing energy on to try to get new leads for folks that might be looking to sell. An example of that might be, let's say that you're in Arlington. So I'll take this back out. Notice that the entire chart refreshes for Arlington. But let's say that you are trying to figure out what's that price point in Arlington that you want to really focus on. Where are you going to have the highest likelihood of success? This really in Arlington, you're going to have success. Pretty much 90% of the listings out there are going to have demand of some sort. But let's say that you want to drill down on what the most in-demand market is and where supply might be tightest relative to that demand. And so for that, you might go to, and we'll switch this back to months, and back to the old supply and demand. You can see how I'm changing metrics by using this drop down here and looking at months of supply. Now we can look at what are the most in-demand price ranges for a particular location. I know there really isn't much in Arlington under 150, so as I turn these on, I can see that the 400 to 500K is the most in-demand price range. So I might want to tailor my marketing efforts towards homes that I think might fit within that range. It might not be something that I share with those folks that I'm marketing towards, but this might be where I really want to narrow down, where are those neighborhoods in Arlington where there's 400 to 500K homes still available. You can see it's extremely tight across the board, 2 months of supply overall, in these even up to 800 to 900K, there's less than a month and a half supply of inventory. Even in the $1 million to $2.5 million range, that's a seller's market, which just blows my mind, but even that's under 6 months of supply, under 4 months of supply. Let's say that I'm in Washington, D.C. I can do the same thing to see, just get a lay of the land of, what's the most in-demand market. It's a bit flatter, and I can see that even for the $1 to $2.5 million home price range, that only has 1.3 months of supply. Washington, D.C. is it's nuts. But if I go out to, let's say that I'm in a more rural place, let's say I'm in Charles County. And you'll notice this is a drastic change, especially when you look at these. So overall, it's a balanced market there, about roughly 5.5 months of supply. It's balanced, but in this 150 to 200K and the 200 to 300K, that's the most active seller's market in this location. If I happen to live in Charles County and that's where I base most of my business on, I might decide, hey, I'm just going to ignore these. I would hate to do it, to pass up on that type of business, but look, this has 11 months of supply, 12 months of supply, 15 months of supply in these more expensive price ranges. I'm not going to waste my time there. I'm going to focus on these price ranges here, and if we switch this to look at days on market, I'm guessing the days on market. No, there just wasn't any. No, that's my months. Was I looking at pricing trend? Let's say that you're in you have a buyer I want to live in Sterling, I work at AOL, and I want a single family house. I need at least 2,000 square feet. So here I could start at Sterling, Virginia. I might be beating this to death, but look at living area square foot. I still have those turned on. And my buyer says, look, I'm not going to live in some tiny house. I've got 5 kids. I need at least 2,000 square feet, but I want to live in Sterling. here I can see that the median sold price is $438,500 for Sterling, Virginia. Let's say that they had a $350,000 cap. That's where compare locations comes into play, and I can turn on by typing in Sterling. I can see which zip codes are in Sterling and start turning on the 3 Sterling zip codes to get a comparison of those 3. There's really not a huge difference between these. Let's say that they're just looking for a detached home. Well, here I can see 20164 is probably your best bet at finding something affordable. Once you get into these other zip codes within Sterling, you might be priced out if you're looking just for a detached home. So there's a lot of different angles, but using all these different comparisons, once you get more comfortable, you might be already comfortable with the tool, but those are just some examples of how you might use the tool to help you. I said I'd get into, shoot, we're already at 45 minutes. For those of you that are interested in embedding, go ahead and hang on to and I'll go through that now for embedding, how to embed these charts onto your websites. Let me go to the questions panel to see if we have any questions. No. Okay. For those of you that don't have websites and aren't interested in embedding, thanks a lot for joining. Have a great weekend. For those of you that are interested, I'll run through that very quickly. I'll try to keep it to 5 minutes and get out of your hair so you can get started on your weekend. Again, if you have any questions, my email address is Corey, C-O-R-E-Y, @rbintel.com. Okay, embedding. So let's say that you have an exact site, and I've set up just a sample website just for this purpose, really. So here's my website. I've built out now this is exact site. You might be using Drupal. You might be using any kind of web publishing software. The mechanics are largely going to be the same. This just happens to be an exact site CMS. So let's say that I just want to, I'll do this one. Let's say I just want to look at median sold price for Sterling for 10 years, and I want to always have that on my website. So I've got my 10-year view. Well, I can see bottomed out January, and I always get into the stats. I'll stay away from the stats. This is just for embedding. I like this chart. I want to embed it. I'm a Sterling expert. What I do is I'm not going to download. That's the view as XLS. If I have a newsletter or an email that I want to put out, or I want to embed this chart onto my PDF, then I can view it as a PNG and copy and paste it. If you're going to put anything into the body of an email is a nasty little thing where there's hundreds of different email carriers, with different codes, etc. Use the PNG. Don't try to embed any chart into the body of an email. It's just that's an iframe, and emails hate iframes. So you can just copy and paste the image itself into whatever collateral you're sending out. But if I have a website, then I'll click the embed. And here I see 2 different options, auto update and fixed date range. If I'm a blogger and let's say I just want to talk about the most recent Sterling stats, and this chart maybe makes sense to my narrative, then I'll click on that fixed date range, because I don't want it to then update in the months ahead and get off of the January end date, because all my narrative is about January. So there I'd click that fixed date range version. More often than not, our users are taking advantage of the auto update version. This is a set it and forget it kind of thing, where once I've set it on my site and RBI gets new data into our system from the MRS system, your website is automatically going to be updated. So in January of 2017, if you're still with us and we're still around and kicking, you'll see January stats, January 2017 stats, if you've done the auto update version. Depending on your website, you can pick if you have, let's say, a right rail, you can pick the tiny option, which is 300 by 280. and you can go up as high as 785 by 440. These we try to pick web standards here. And let's say that I just want to go with this 620 by 330. That's what fits my range. So I'm going to grab this code. I can either hit Control C, and just the shortcut, or on Apple I guess it's Mac C, or I can right click and hit copy. So I copy that, and then I go into my admin panel. So this is the first view is a WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get kind of deal, where let's just say that I'm trying to put it down here. I can go and put a placeholder here, say place chart here. If I'm not comfortable with HTML, place chart here. That's just something to remind me of where I want to put it. Then I'll switch over to, in exact site it says HTML, and Drupal, I think it says source. Other places call this a different thing, but it's basically the HTML viewer, the source code. And this could look scary if I'm not comfortable with HTML, but I go and find where did I say to put place chart here? Oh, it's right there. Okay. So then I copy, and I'll either hit Control V or paste, right click and click paste. And then when I go back to the design view, then I see my chart here. Okay, hit publish, get a little thing, and this is just an exact site thing. Hit publish, and voila! From now on, before this was my bottom chart, and now when I refresh this, I should see, and my users will see the chart that I just put in there. We've seen, if you look at our marketing pages on our website, you'll see some examples of other users that have done similar things. You can build that. You can go as crazy as you want to. You can embed thousands of these things, or you can embed one and have it on your main page and just have it a market gauge. The good thing about doing this embedding function is that then you can send folks in your social media campaigns back to your website as the source of stats for your area. If you don't have a website, and I guess if you've stayed on this far, if you probably do, but if you don't have a website or you don't want to get into embedding, then there's always the share option. That's the final option for the portability for these charts. I can share, this chart, and basically anybody, SmartCharts Pro, SmartCharts Free, end users that have never heard of SmartCharts, if I copy and paste this link onto Twitter or onto Facebook, it will then send them, and you'll want to put your narrative around, okay, what does this chart mean? But it'll send folks back to the RBI site, which is getsmartcharts.com, but this isn't protected by, there's no authentication. They can just go and see that chart. I could email this to my clients and say, hey, take a look at median sale price. This isn't the most illustrative chart I might do, but that's embedding in a nutshell. Hopefully that made sense. Last time I'll say my email address is Corey, C-R-E-Y, at rbintel.com. I appreciate your hanging around. Hopefully this was helpful. I hope you all have a great weekend. I'm looking forward to spring. I know you all are when we start seeing that seasonality come into play. I'm looking forward just because it's warmer, but I know you all are looking forward to it because all the business that's coming. But have a great weekend. Have a great spring. Thanks for giving us a look, and we appreciate your business. Thanks again. Bye-bye.